Eliza Vance, 24, art history PhD turned hotel maid, had one job: clean the glassware and disappear. But tonight, Domenico Moretti, New York's most dangerous man, is signing a $200 million contract. The documents look perfect. 3 lawyers verified them. Except they're fake. And Eliza, with a photographic memory for Renaissance forgeries, has one chance to do the impossible: speak 7 words in Sicilian that will stop a catastrophic fraud, expose a deadly conspiracy, and prove the invisible Maid knows more than his entire legal team. Winter rain hammered Manhattan like a warning. On Park Avenue, the Moretti Hotel rose 48 stories of bulletproof glass and unspoken power. To call it a hotel was technically accurate, but spiritually incomplete. This was where 8-figure deals happened in whispers, where conversations that would never see courtrooms unfolded behind reinforced windows. The penthouse level wasn't advertised because if you had to ask, you'd never belong. And moving through this fortress every evening, carrying supplies in a uniform that rendered her invisible, was Eliza Vance. Eliza Vance moved through the Moretti Hotel penthouse like water, silent, necessary, beneath notice. Her uniform was pressed to military precision, her dark hair pulled into a bun so tight it felt like penance. She'd learned to make herself small in these spaces where everything cost more than most people earned in a year. The crystal stemware she polished probably cost more than her monthly rent. The marble floors beneath her feet were Italian calicatta, quarried from the same region she'd written about in her thesis chapter on Venetian trade monopolies. The irony wasn't lost on her. 2 years ago, Eliza Vance had been the youngest PhD candidate Columbia's Italian Renaissance program had admitted in 15 years. She'd published in the Journal of Renaissance Economic Studies at 22. Her dissertation, Forgery Techniques in Venetian Maritime Contracts, 1450 to 1600, had earned her a standing ovation at her proposal defense. Professor Chen had called her work revolutionary. 3 museums had already reached out about postdoctoral positions. Then her student loans came due. $180,000 at 7.2% interest. Her academic stipend covered $2,100 a month. Her loan payments alone were $1,800. The math was simple, brutal, inescapable. So Dr. Eliza Vance, or the woman who would have been Dr. Vance in 6 months, became invisible. She stopped returning museum emails, stopped attending department colloquia, started wearing polyester uniforms and cleaning hotel suites where people like her would never stay as guests. Vance, penthouse level, 8:30 sharp. Her supervisor's voice had been clipped that afternoon. Mr. Moretti's private meeting. Big money. Be invisible. Be invisible. She'd become an expert at that. The staff whispered about Domenico Moretti the way people whispered about weather systems that could destroy cities. Former Mafia connections, they said. Legitimate now mostly. Built an empire buying distressed properties and turning them into fortunes. Ruthless but fair. The kind of man who remembered favors and never forgot insults. The kind of man who owned hotels where the penthouse level required 3 security checkpoints and a background investigation. Eliza adjusted a champagne flute on the sideboard, her photographic memory automatically cataloging the suite. 16th century Venetian mirror above the fireplace, authentic, probably worth $200,000. The leather-bound books on the shelf were decorative, except for one, a first edition Machiavelli that someone had actually read, spine creased at chapter 18. And on the wall behind the conference table, impossibly, was a Caravaggio. She froze mid-polish. It was genuine. She'd written a 20-page paper on this exact painting's provenance for her seminar on Baroque authentication techniques. She'd studied every brushstroke in museum archives. And here it was, hanging in a hotel penthouse like some people hung motivational posters. If anyone discovered she was Vance, the scholar who'd published groundbreaking work on detecting forgeries in Renaissance financial documents, she'd be more than fired. She'd be exposed. The invisibility she'd worked so hard to achieve would shatter. Voices echoed in the marble hallway outside. Deep, controlled, speaking rapid Italian. Security radios crackling. The meeting was arriving early. Eliza's pulse spiked. She had maybe 90 seconds to finish and disappear. She moved toward the door, head down, invisible. The door opened, and Domenico Moretti walked into the room. Domenico Moretti didn't walk into rooms, he claimed them. Late 30s, tailored Italian suit that probably cost more than Eliza's entire year of tuition. Dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from Carrara marble and then taught to calculate interest rates. He moved with the controlled precision of a man who'd learned early that hesitation was weakness. Behind him came an entourage, a broad-shouldered man with military posture who could only be security, two younger men in expensive suits carrying leather portfolios, and a couple who radiated the specific confidence of people who'd never been told no. Eliza pressed herself against the sideboard, clutching her polishing cloth like a talisman of invisibility. Marco. Moretti's voice was measured, warm even, as he embraced the older man. 20 years we've been talking about this. Tonight we finally make it real. To partnership, Dom. Like our fathers dreamed. Marco Valente had silver threading through his dark hair and the comfortable posture of old money. His wife, Isabella, was all sharp angles and sharper intelligence in a burgundy suit that screamed corporate law. They arranged themselves around the conference table, Marco and Isabella on one side, Moretti flanked by Victor and the lawyers on the other. Document folders appeared, expensive pens were uncapped, champagne was poured into glasses Eliza had polished an hour ago. The Adriatic Maritime Investment Portfolio, Isabella began, sliding a leather portfolio across the table. Her voice had the particular cadence of someone who'd convinced many juries of many things. Verified by Stewart and Cross, authenticated by 3 international maritime law firms. Historic trade routes, existing contracts, Mediterranean port access rights. $200 million for assets conservatively valued at $500 million plus. Moretti opened the portfolio. Even from 12 feet away, Eliza could see the documents, thick parchment paper, embossed seals, flowing calligraphy headers. Perpetual maritime rights, one of Moretti's lawyers read aloud, impressed. Traceable to the Venetian Republic's original grants. This is extraordinary provenance. Eliza's hands stopped moving. That letterhead. She'd seen variations of it in 100 archived documents at Columbia's Rare Books Library. The seal of Venice's Camera di Commercio, the Chamber of Commerce. Except that wasn't right. The language was modern Italian. In the 16th century, Venetian merchants used Camera del Commercio, dialect spelling with the distinctive Z. And perpetual maritime rights, that legal concept didn't exist until the Treaty of Methuen in 1703. These documents claimed to be from 1485. Her dissertation flashed through her mind in sharp fragments. Chapter 4. Linguistic Anachronisms as Primary Indicators of Forgery. The forger had been brilliant, period-accurate seals, genuine historical trade route references, even the right kind of paper. But they'd used modern Italian grammatical structures. They'd studied translations, not original documents. This was a forgery. A sophisticated, expensive, absolutely devastating forgery. Everything appears in order, Marco was saying. Dom, your signature here, and we finalized the partnership our fathers always intended. Moretti reached for his pen. His Mont Blanc fountain pen, probably worth more than Eliza's car. Isabella smiled, small and satisfied. Marco watched with the patience of someone who'd waited 2 decades for this moment. You're a maid, Eliza's survival instinct screamed. Asterisk say nothing. You're invisible. If you're wrong, you're fired and blacklisted. If you're right, asterisk. But Professor Chen's voice cut through her panic, the same words he'd said at her proposal defense. Asterisk, what's the point of knowledge if we're too afraid to use it? Asterisk. The pen touched paper. Eliza's mouth opened. Signore Moretti. Her voice came out softer than she intended, but clear. Sicilian, the language her grandmother taught her, the dialect of her dissertation research. Aspetti un momento. Questo è falso. Wait a moment. This is fake. Every head in the room turned toward her. The conference room became a photograph, everyone frozen mid-motion. Marco half rose from his chair. Isabella's smile vanished like someone had flipped a switch. Victor's hand moved toward his jacket in a motion so smooth it was almost invisible. The three lawyers exchanged glances that calculated survival odds. Domenico Moretti's head turned slowly, dark eyes scanning the room until they found her. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, controlled, absolutely terrifying. Ci ha parlato? Who spoke? Eliza stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but her voice held steady, Sicilian flowing as naturally as breathing. Io, signore. I questi documenti sono fraudolenti. I did, sir. And these documents are fraudulent. Isabella recovered first, corporate lawyer instincts kicking in. Mr. Moretti, this is completely inappropriate. She's hotel staff. Security should remove her immediately. Dom raised one hand. Just that. One hand, barely lifted from the table. Silence fell like a guillotine blade. His eyes never left Eliza's face. When he spoke again, it was in perfect Italian, the formal register of someone who'd been educated in languages the way other people were educated in violence. Spiega. Explain. Eliza's mouth was dry, but her mind was crystalline, sharp with 2 years of dissertation research. The letterhead uses Camera di Commercio, modern Italian. 16th century Venetian documents used dialect spelling, Camera del Commercio with AZ. And these documents reference perpetual maritime rights, a legal concept that didn't exist until the Treaty of Methuen in 1703. Your documents claim to be from 1485. This is absurd, Isabella cut in, standing now. Mr. Moretti, our authentication firms spent months verifying. The forger was brilliant. Eliza interrupted, surprising herself with her own courage. Period-accurate seals, correct trade route names, genuine historical references. But they studied English translations, not original Venetian documents. The grammatical structure is wrong. The legal phrasing is from 2020's corporate law, not Renaissance commerce contracts. Dom turned to his lawyers. Verify. Now. The youngest lawyer pulled a magnifying loupe from his briefcase, examining the letterhead with hands that trembled slightly. 30 seconds of silence. Then, Dio mio, she's right. The spelling, the linguistic pattern is contemporary Italian, not period Venetian. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Marco tried damage control, voice too loud, too jovial. Dom, this is a minor translation issue. The routes themselves are real. The value is solid. A minor issue. Dom's voice was arctic. In a $200 million transaction. He stood, and everyone else instinctively stepped back. Victor, escort Mr. and Mrs. Valente to the library. We'll discuss this discrepancy. Isabella opened her mouth to protest. Marco's hand on her arm stopped her. Victor appeared between them and the door. Not touching, not threatening, just present in a way that made threats unnecessary. The three lawyers gathered their materials with the practiced speed of people abandoning a sinking ship. When the door closed, Dom walked to the sideboard and poured 2 glasses of wine. Expensive wine, the kind Eliza had only ever served. He handed her one. Who are you? His voice was different now, curious, almost gentle. And don't tell me you're just a maid. The wine trembled in her hand. Eliza Vance. Columbia PhD candidate. My dissertation is on forgery detection in Renaissance Italian economic documents. I have student loans. $180,000. My stipend doesn't cover it, so I clean hotel suites at night. Silence stretched between them. Then, you just saved me from financial ruin and probably assassination. I what? That level of forgery? That's not about stealing money. That's about creating legal frameworks for asset seizure, federal investigations, or worse. He studied her like she was one of the Renaissance paintings on his walls. Authentication work. Document verification. Finding lies buried in pretty words. Name your salary. She named a number that seemed impossibly high. 5 times her academic stipend. Per month. He laughed, actually laughed. Double it. Plus full benefits and security detail. She choked on her wine. Loyalty, he continued, serious now. Truth, even when inconvenient. Even when dangerous. Can you do that? Eliza thought of 2 years being invisible. 2 years hiding her expertise, her voice, her identity. Yes, I can do that. His smile was slight but genuine. In Sicilian, warm and somehow intimate, Benvenuta, Eliza Vance. You just became the most valuable person in my organization. Outside the windows, the rain had stopped. Manhattan glittered like scattered diamonds. And Eliza Vance, invisible for so long, was finally, terrifyingly, brilliantly visible. If you're loving this story of courage and danger, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Mafia Vibes. Drop a comment and tell me, what time is it where you are, and which city are you watching from? Now let's continue. Asterisk asterisk. 5 days later, Eliza stood in Domenico Moretti's private office on the 48th floor of his Tribeca tower and tried to remember what invisibility felt like. Floor-to-ceiling bulletproof glass framed Manhattan like a painting. Behind her, a climate-controlled vault held documents worth more than small countries. On the walls, Renaissance artwork she'd personally authenticated, a Bellini sketch, a possible Titian, a Byzantine icon with provenance she'd traced back 4 centuries. She wore a tailored charcoal suit that fit like it had been made for her, because it had been made for her. Her own office. Her own security detail. A nameplate that read, Dr. Eliza Vance, Chief Authentication Officer, even though she hadn't technically finished her dissertation yet. He insists you'll finish it, Dom had said when she protested. And what I insist tends to happen. The conference room door opened. Marco Valente walked in alone, no Isabella this time, flanked by a silver-haired man in tweeds who radiated academic authority. Dom. Marco's smile was strained. I've brought Professor Edmund Ashford. Oxford. Published extensively on Mediterranean maritime history. He's re-authenticated the Adriatic portfolio. Everything's in order now. Professor Ashford placed a leather-bound portfolio on the table with the reverence of someone handling religious texts. Revised documentation. Carbon dated to 1475 to 1490. Period ink analysis confirms 15th century iron gall composition. Binding techniques consistent with Venetian notarial practices. The genealogical records establish clear lineage to historic trade routes, 12% of current Mediterranean shipping traffic. Conservative valuation, $150 million. Eliza opened the portfolio. 45 pages of thick parchment, flowing calligraphy, wax seals that caught the light like amber. It was beautiful. Meticulous. Almost perfect. Almost. The notary seal on page 3 used Serenissima Repubblica, formal Italian. But 15th century Venetian notaries used dialect, Serenissima Repubblica, with grave accents over the I's. And the subjunctive mood in the legal clauses was wrong, modern Italian construction, not period grammar. 5 days into her dream job. An Oxford professor across the table. $150 million deal. She could stay silent. Should stay silent. Truth, even when inconvenient. Professor Ashford. Her voice was steady. With respect, these documents aren't authentic. They're sophisticated forgeries using period materials, but modern linguistic construction. The room exploded. Marco half stood, face reddening. Ashford bristled like she'd insulted his mother. Victor's hand moved inside his jacket. Dom remained perfectly still, dark eyes moving between her and the documents. The notary seal uses standardized Italian, Eliza continued. 15th century Venetian documents used dialect spelling, asterisk serenissima asterisk with grave accents, not serenissima. And the grammatical structure in these legal clauses is contemporary. The subjunctive mood is wrong for the period. Ashford grabbed a magnifying glass, examined the seal. His face went pale. My God. She's right. I focused on material composition. I didn't analyze the linguistic patterns. Dom, this is ridiculous. Marco's voice cracked. You're trusting a graduate student over Oxford credentials. I'm trusting the graduate student who's been right twice. Dom's voice could have frozen mercury. You, Marco, have brought me 2 fraudulent deals in 1 week. Security will escort you out, Mr. Valente, Victor said, materializing at Marco's elbow. When the door closed, Dom poured 2 glasses of wine, apparently their ritual now. You have a gift for making powerful men look foolish. In my world, that usually gets people killed. Eliza laughed nervously. Comforting thought. His smile was slight but genuine, transforming his face into something almost warm. By other people. By me, you get a raise. He named a number. She choked on her wine. That's not a salary, that's embezzlement. You're keeping me from losing hundreds of millions. You're worth every cent. His expression darkened. Why would Marco bring me 2 fraudulent deals? We grew up together. He's been my partner for 20 years. Either he's being used, Eliza said slowly, or he's using you. We need to find out which. The door burst open. Victor, face grim. Boss. Marco and Isabella both disappeared. No phone contact. Security can't locate them. And we found something. He placed a small electronic device on the table. Tracking device. Embedded in the portfolio binding. Eliza's stomach dropped. They weren't just trying to defraud you. They were trying to track your vault location. Your security protocols. How you verify documents. Dom stood, every muscle coiled. Get your things. You're staying at my penthouse until we sort this out. I'm not losing the only person I can trust. Dom's penthouse was nothing like Eliza expected. No marble excess or gold fixtures, instead, a converted industrial space with exposed brick, steel beams, and floor-to-ceiling windows that turned Manhattan into a light show. Renaissance paintings hung on brick walls like they'd always belonged there. The security system probably cost more than her entire education. They sat at his kitchen island, Italian marble, naturally examining a property deed he was considering. $5 million for a Connecticut estate with extensive mineral rights. The deed is authentic, Eliza said, running her fingers over the paper. 1952, legitimate notary seal. But this addendum about mineral rights. She held it to the light. Added last year. Different typewriter. The font is Courier New. Didn't exist until 1955. And the legal language is too modern. This property is worth maybe $1.2 million, not 5. Dom leaned back, exhaled slowly. How many more? I'll need to review your entire portfolio. But Dom, she met his eyes. Someone's been systematically defrauding you for years. He poured more wine. They were close enough now that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to feel the heat of him. Why did you build all this? She asked. The legitimate empire. You could have stayed. Like my father? His laugh was bitter. Vito Moretti. Actual Mafia Don. Violence, fear, blood money. I spent my childhood watching him destroy people. I wanted to prove there was another way. That you could build power without bodies in the foundation. He paused. Ironic that I'm being destroyed by paperwork instead of bullets. Why did you risk it? His question was soft. That first night. You didn't know me. I could have had you killed. Because staying silent was killing me anyway. The wine made her brave. 2 years invisible. 2 years pretending my brain didn't exist. At least speaking up was an interesting way to go. His laugh was genuine this time, warm. You're either the bravest person I've met or the most reckless. My professor used to say those are the same thing in academia. They were close now, his hand near hers on the counter, Manhattan sparkling below them like scattered stars. His eyes dropped to her lips. The window exploded. Suppressed gunfire, 3 distinct weapons, bullets punching through bulletproof glass that apparently wasn't bulletproof enough. Dom's body slammed into hers, dragging her behind the marble island as the world became flying glass and splintering wood. A Renaissance portrait, authenticated just yesterday, took 3 rounds and disintegrated. Is this standard for your business meetings? Eliza gasped, heart hammering. Only the important ones. Victor appeared from nowhere, returning fire through the shattered windows. More gunshots from Dom's security team, coordinated, professional. Dom's phone buzzed. Text message, unknown number. The girl knows too much. So do you. Time to retire. Move. Victor barked. They ran low, through a hidden door Eliza hadn't known existed, into a private elevator that plunged them toward the underground garage. An armored SUV waited, engine running. As they peeled out, tires screaming, Victor checked his tablet. Boss. Marco's phone was pinging from the building where the shooters fired from. Eliza's mind raced. Isabella's law firm handled all the authentication paperwork for every fraudulent deal. They weren't being used. They're doing this. They're trying to bankrupt you and kill you, she continued, pieces clicking together. The forgeries create legal vulnerabilities. The tracking devices map your security. The assassination removes the witness, me and you. They're trying to kill us, Dom corrected, his hand finding hers in the darkness. You're the only one who can prove the fraud. The safe house was a converted Red Hook warehouse, reinforced walls, multiple escape routes, enough weapons to outfit a small army. While Victor made calls and coordinated security, Dom pulled Eliza into a corner room with actual windows, actual privacy. I won't let anything happen to you. His voice was fierce. You spoke truth for me. I'll protect you with my life. I've been invisible so long, she whispered. I forgot what it felt like to matter to someone. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. You matter. You've always mattered. The world just wasn't paying attention. The kiss was inevitable, desperate and grateful, tasting like fear and trust and something that felt dangerously like hope. His hands in her hair, her fingers gripping his shirt, Manhattan burning somewhere behind them. Victor's voice shattered the moment. Boss. Marco just liquidated $40 million from your offshore accounts. The Red Hook safe house smelled like concrete and gun oil. Reinforced walls 2 feet thick, escape routes through the floor and ceiling, enough weaponry to outfit a small rebellion. Eliza sat at a steel table surrounded by men who looked like they'd forgotten how to smile years ago. Victor, Roberto the accountant who somehow looked more dangerous than the armed guards, and 2 silent captains from what Dom carefully called the old organization. $40 million liquidated, Roberto said, spreadsheets covering the table. Another $60 million in fraudulent investments we can't recover. Business credit lines compromised. And Marco filed partnership dissolution papers 3 days ago, legal framework to seize 50% of your legitimate holdings. 3 days ago, Dom repeated slowly. Before the first forgery was exposed. This wasn't spontaneous, Victor confirmed. Minimum 2-year planning. Probably longer. Eliza studied the documents spread before her, dozens of deals, hundreds of pages, years of systematic fraud. But something nagged at her, a pattern she couldn't quite see. She grabbed a magnifying glass, compared 3 different, authenticated, documents from Isabella's firm. The forger, she said suddenly. Everyone turned. It's the same person. Look, identical style errors across all documents. This phrase, heretofore established maritime privileges. That's modern English legal terminology translated into Italian. No Renaissance merchant would phrase it that way. She pulled up Professor Ashford's published work on her laptop. He studied Venetian economic history using English translations, specifically Whitaker's 1973 anthology. These forgeries contain Whitaker's translation errors. Every single one. Ashford wasn't duped, Dom said, voice like winter. He's the forger. Victor was already on his phone. 3 minutes later, Ashford's phone records. 17 calls to Isabella's private line in the last month. And 6 calls to an unknown number in Staten Island. Roberto cross-referenced the location. Valente family estate. Marco's inheritance. Waterfront property isolated. Surveillance images appeared on Victor's tablet, thermal signatures showing 3 people inside the mansion's study. Heat patterns suggesting they weren't worried, weren't hiding, weren't running. They're waiting, Victor said. Dom stood. We end this tonight. I want my money back, and I want them to understand exactly why they failed. I'm coming. Eliza's voice was steady. No. Dom's response was immediate. These people tried to kill you. They tried to kill me because I saw the truth. Let me finish what I started. You need documentation for the FBI. I can identify every forgery, explain every error, testify to the linguistic patterns. You need me there. His jaw tightened. Too dangerous. First graduate student to wear a wire to a mob confrontation, she said, trying for humor. Definitely not in the PhD handbook, but I'm committed to innovative research methods. Victor handed her recording equipment, small, professional, probably illegal. Federal admissibility is questionable, but it'll give us leverage. Dom pulled her aside, away from the others. His hands framed her face. If this goes wrong, if they get past me, you run. Victor will extract you. Promise me. I didn't speak up that night just to run when things got hard. Her hands covered his. We finish this together. The convoy, 3 armored vehicles, 8 armed men, 1 terrified art historian rolled through rain-slicked streets towards Staten Island. Eliza sat beside Dom in the lead SUV, watching Manhattan's lights fade behind them. Why? She asked quietly. 20 years of partnership. Why betray you now? Dom's expression was carved from stone. My father chose me to inherit the organization. Marco thought we'd share it. We grew up together. His father was my father's consigliere. When I went legitimate, built this empire from clean money. He paused. He felt I stole his birthright twice. First, the criminal organization he couldn't have, then the legitimate one he didn't help build. The Valente estate emerged from darkness like something from a Gothic novel, crumbling stone, overgrown gardens, a single light burning in an upper window like a challenge. 2 guards, Victor reported. Armed but visible. They want us to see them. It's too easy, one of the captains muttered. They're expecting us. Of course they are. Dom checked his weapon. But they don't know we're expecting them to expect us. Eliza whispered. That sentence made my head hurt. Dom turned to her one last time. Kissed her forehead like a benediction. Stay behind me. Always. Stay alive, she answered. Always. They moved toward the mansion like shadows, like inevitability, like the ending that had been written 2 years ago when Marco first decided betrayal was worth more than brotherhood. The front door was unlocked. Not broken, not forced, simply open, like an invitation to a party where everyone knew the guest list ended in blood. Inside, dust covers had been removed from furniture. A fire crackled in the marble fireplace. 3 champagne glasses waited on a silver tray, condensation suggesting they'd been poured recently. The study blazed with light, Marco behind a mahogany desk like a king holding court, Isabella draped elegantly on a leather sofa, and Professor Ashford standing by floor-to-ceiling bookshelves with the satisfied expression of someone who'd solved a particularly difficult equation. Dom. Marco's smile was all warmth, all betrayal. Right on time. You always were predictable. And you were always patient. Dom's voice could have frozen fire. 2 years is a long time to plan a betrayal. Isabella laughed, crystalline, corporate, utterly without remorse. Plan? Domenico, this has been in motion since you went legitimate. You betrayed us first. Eliza's recording device was running, hidden microphone capturing every word. Legally questionable, maybe, but Victor had assured her federal prosecutors could work with it. Your father promised us an empire. Marco stood. Decades of resentment finally unleashed. You promised partnership. Instead, you became a legitimate businessman and left us managing scraps. Clean money. Legal power. Like we were children playing dress-up in your father's kingdom. I offered you legitimate business, Dom countered. 50-50 split. You said no. I don't want clean money. Marco's fist hit the desk. Your father should have chosen me. We grew up together. My father died for yours. And you got everything. The fraudulent documents weren't just theft, Isabella added, examining her manicured nails. Each one created legal vulnerabilities, grounds for federal investigation, asset seizure, RICO charges. We weren't just taking your money, Domenico. We were destroying the legitimacy you valued so much. Professor Ashford stepped forward, academic pride wounded. The forgeries were perfect. Flawless. If this graduate student hadn't stuck her nose. They weren't perfect. Eliza stepped from behind Dom, fury overriding fear. You used English translated source materials. A real scholar would have used original Venetian documents. I am a real scholar. Ashford's face reddened. Oxford professor. Published extensively. Published extensively on documents you've never actually examined in person. You cited Whitaker's 1973 translation errors in every forgery. That's how I knew. You're a fraud, Professor. An academic fraud using real credentials to create fake history. Marco pulled a gun. Not dramatic, just efficient. Enough. Dom, you're signing dissolution papers, transferring accounts, and then, unfortunately, you're going to die in a tragic home invasion. Along with your little girlfriend, Isabella added. Loose ends. Multiple doors burst open simultaneously. Victor and 4 others, weapons drawn, professional and terrifying. But then Marco's hidden team emerged, 8 men, former organization members who'd stayed loyal to the old ways, to the promise of what Marco represented. 16 guns. 1 room. A standoff that smelled like gunpowder, and the end of everything. Ashford grabbed Eliza, arm around her throat. Nobody moves. Dom's rage was volcanic. Let her go. This is between us. She's the reason this fell apart, Marco said. She dies first. Eliza remembered her dissertation research, Chapter 7, Merchant Self-Defense in Renaissance Venice. She stamped down hard on Ashford's instep, drove her elbow into his solar plexus, and dropped low as his grip loosened. Gunfire erupted. The study became chaos, antique furniture splintering, books exploding in clouds of paper and history, men shouting and shooting and dying. Dom reached Eliza, his body covering hers. Stay down. Victor and his team advanced with military precision. Marco's men fell back, outmatched, outmaneuvered. Marco and Dom faced each other across the wreckage, childhood friends, business partners, brothers in everything but blood, now just 2 men with guns and grievances. It should have been me, Marco said. Your father should have chosen me. He chose me because I could see beyond violence. Dom's voice was almost gentle. You never learned that lesson. Marco fired. The bullet grazed Dom's side, painful, bloody, not fatal. Dom's return fire hit Marco's shoulder. The gun clattered across marble floors. Isabella tried to run. Victor intercepted her, zip ties appearing like magic around her wrists. Ashford scrambled toward the door. Eliza stuck out her foot, tripped him, and sat firmly on his back. That's for insulting my scholarship. Police sirens wailed outside. Victor had called them 3 minutes into the confrontation. Evidence preservation, he'd explained earlier, was everything. FBI flooded the study. Eliza's recording, combined with documents spread across the floor like confession-made paper, gave them everything they needed. You stole everything from me. Marco screamed as they hauled him away. Everything. I gave you chances, Dom said quietly, blood seeping through his shirt. You chose this. Paramedics swarmed. Dom's wound was through and through, muscle damage, nothing vital hit. Eliza refused to leave his side, her hand gripping his while they worked. He laughed, pained but genuine. You sat on a university professor. He plagiarized Whitaker. Unforgivable academic sin. An FBI agent approached, impressed despite himself. Ma'am, your recording just made our case. We've been investigating Valente for 18 months. Through the study windows, Eliza watched Marco loaded into a federal vehicle, his eyes burning with hatred that would probably last until death. Dom's whisper was for her alone. Thank you. For seeing the truth. For speaking up. For staying. Where else would I be? The emergency room smelled like antiseptic and second chances. Dom's wound required 47 stitches, and Eliza refused to leave his side despite being completely uninjured. You know you're not actually my doctor, Daughteressa, he said through pain medication that made him unusually candid. Daughteressa means PhD, not MD. But I'm not leaving, so get comfortable. FBI debriefing lasted 3 days. Eliza's expertise became the prosecution's cornerstone: linguistic analysis, forgery detection techniques, the paper trail that connected Marco, Isabella, and Ashford to $340 million in attempted fraud. Her academic advisor called on day 2. Eliza? Where have you been? Your dissertation defense is in 2 weeks. Wait, are you on the news? 8 weeks later, the headlines told the story better than Eliza ever could. The New York Times, graduate student's expertise stops $200 million fraud ring. Wall Street Journal, Moretti empire emerges stronger after insider conspiracy. Chronicle of Higher Education, PhD research prevents massive financial crime. Marco Valente, 25 years federal prison. Isabella, 15 years, disbarred, her cooperation buying reduced time. Professor Ashford, 10 years, Oxford launching investigations into 47 potentially fraudulent documents he'd authenticated. The FBI called it the biggest financial forgery case involving historical documents in bureau history. Eliza's dissertation defense drew a standing ovation. Her committee unanimously approved truth in translation, linguistic analysis for forgery detection in Renaissance economic documents. Cambridge University Press published it immediately. Professor Chin cried, actual tears, and told her, you took your scholarship and saved someone's life with it. Job offers flooded in. 6 universities. 3 museums. 2 federal agencies. She turned them all down. 8 weeks after the confrontation, Eliza stood on Dom's penthouse balcony, the rebuilt one, with properly bulletproof glass this time, watching Manhattan paint itself in sunset colors. Dom was fully healed, a scar on his side the only reminder he'd survived. His empire was stronger, cleaner, every fraudulent deal unwound and replaced with legitimate partnerships. He handed her champagne. She wore an evening dress, her choice this time, not a uniform. I've been thinking about what you said, he began. About being invisible. She listened, curious. I've been invisible too. Hiding behind legitimate business, pretending I wasn't still my father's son. You made me see that transformation isn't hiding, it's choosing differently. Her fingers traced his scar through his shirt. We both chose differently. That night I spoke up, I chose to be seen. You chose to trust me. I'm establishing something. His voice held careful neutrality. The Vance Institute for Document Authentication. Fully funded research center. Columbia Partnership. Training scholars in forgery detection. You'll direct it. He named a salary. She choked on champagne. His laugh was warm. You keep doing that when I mention money. You're serious? Tears blurred Manhattan's lights. An entire institute? His hand cupped her face. You saved my life by speaking truth. Now help others learn to see truth. Besides a smile, I need you to keep authenticating my deals. Can't trust anyone else. That's the real reason, isn't it? 50% that. 50% I love you and want you to stay. Her breath caught. You love me. From the moment you whispered questo e falso in perfect Sicilian. You were terrified, but spoke anyway. How could I not love that? I love you too. Even though you got shot protecting me and scared me half to death. His grin transformed him. But I survived. And you sat on a professor. We're even. The kiss tasted like champagne and promises, Manhattan glittering below them like scattered possibilities. No more invisibility, he whispered. For either of us. No more hiding. Just truth. 3 months later, Columbia's campus hosted the Institute's opening ceremony. A converted historic building, state-of-the-art authentication labs, a plaque reading, the Vance Institute for Document Authentication and Historical Preservation, empowering scholars to recognize truth and speak it bravely. Eliza stood at the podium, looking at graduate students and federal investigators and museum curators. Truth doesn't need perfect circumstances. It needs people willing to speak, even when they're terrified. Dom sat front row, watching her with undisguised pride. The Moretti Foundation would fund 10 full scholarships annually, academic excellence plus demonstrated courage required. The New York Times ran it on page A1, Dr. Eliza Vance and Domenico Moretti at the ribbon cutting, her head on his shoulder, both smiling like people who'd survived something impossible. Dom's quote made the headline. She whispered 7 words that changed everything. Now we're making sure other voices get heard too. She'd started invisible. She'd ended celebrated. And somewhere between a hotel penthouse and a federal courtroom, between fear and courage, between silence and truth, Eliza Vance had learned that the smallest voice, when brave enough to speak, could save everything. 6 months after that night, Eliza's office at the Vance Institute overlooked Columbia's campus like a watchtower for truth. Renaissance documents rested in climate-controlled cases. Authentication equipment lined the walls, spectroscopy machines, infrared scanners, tools that revealed what forgers tried to hide. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, she watched students cross the quad, carrying books and dreams and the particular urgency of people chasing knowledge. Her dissertation had become required reading in 3 graduate programs. This morning, a young woman sat across from her desk, notebook open, asking about linguistic analysis techniques with the hunger Eliza recognized, the need to understand, to see clearly, to matter. Dr. Vance, the student asked, hesitant, were you really scared that night you spoke up? Eliza didn't soften it. Terrified. But staying silent was scarier. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is speak truth when everyone expects silence. The student left inspired, shoulders straighter. Eliza stood at her window, watching her disappear into the campus crowd, and remembered what invisibility felt like. Your 4 o'clock appointment is here. She turned. Dom stood in her doorway, holding 2 coffee cups, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her first car. His smile was the private one, the real one, the one that had nothing to do with business empires and everything to do with her. I don't have a 4 o'clock. You do now. Dinner reservation. That place you like in the village. The one where we had our first actual date after you got shot? His mock offense was perfect. I thought the shooting, FBI raid, and dramatic arrest counted as a first date. She crossed to him, kissed him softly. That was foreplay. Dinner was the actual date. They stood together at her window. Students walked below, carrying the future in backpacks and determination. Manhattan stretched beyond campus, glittering in late afternoon light. I spent 2 years making myself invisible, Eliza said quietly. Now I spend every day teaching people to be seen. Dom's arms circled her waist. You taught me to be seen too. The real me, not my father's shadow. We saved each other. You saved me first. I just had the good sense to listen. She leaned into him, safe and visible and exactly where she belonged. 7 words in Sicilian changed everything. What were they again? His voice held warmth and teasing and love. Signore Moretti. Aspetti. Questo e falso. She smiled against his shoulder. Mr. Moretti. Wait. This is fake. Best 7 words anyone ever said to me. What about I love you? That's 3 words. His kiss was answer enough. Those are second best. She started invisible. She ended celebrated. He started dangerous. He ended transformed. Truth, when spoken bravely, doesn't just save one person, it ripples outward, creating spaces for others to be heard. Eliza Vance whispered 7 words in Sicilian and stopped a $200 million scam. But more importantly, she stopped being invisible. And in teaching Domenico Moretti to trust, she taught him to love. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room knows the biggest truth. Sometimes all it takes is 7 words to change 2 lives forever. And sometimes the person cleaning the glassware knows more than everyone at the table. They just need the courage to speak. They left the institute together as evening painted Manhattan gold. Students called goodbyes. See you tomorrow, Dr. Vance. And she waved, his hand protective on her back, both walking toward a future neither expected but both chose. 2 people who found each other in a moment of desperate honesty, building something legitimate, something true, something lasting. The Vance Institute has trained over 200 scholars in document authentication. Marco Valente is serving 25 years. Professor Ashford's academic fraud led to investigations of 47 questioned documents across 12 institutions. Domenico Moretti's businesses operate entirely legitimately and partner with 6 major universities. Dr. Eliza Vance published 2 more books and married her favorite authentication client. They live in Tribeca with their dog, a rescue named Caravaggio. Truth spoke. Love listened. Everything changed. Asterisk, asterisk. And that's the story of how one whispered truth in Sicilian saved everything. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe in the power of speaking up, do 3 things for me right now. Hit that like button, it helps more people find stories like this. Subscribe to Mafia Vibes. We tell stories about courage, danger, redemption, and love. Stories that matter. Stories that remind you that one person speaking truth can change everything. Tell me in the comments, what time is it where you're watching from? What city or country? And here's the big question. If you were Eliza, standing in that room with everything to lose, would you have spoken up? Would you have whispered questo e falso? I want to know. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been making themselves invisible. Someone who has truth they're afraid to speak. Someone who needs to remember that their voice matters. Until next time, stay brave, stay bold, and never be afraid to whisper truth to power.